Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about all the headlines from this past weekend. Deion Sanders is healthy. He is officially cancer-free and will be on the sideline for the Buffs this upcoming season. We had Trump's executive order that doesn't do too much in the short term, but very well could in the long term, and we'll see what happens there. Obviously, we'll cover that as it unfolds, but let's get into a little bit of a stock market. Let's talk about the college football stock market as we head into the 2025 season. Who am I buying? Who am I selling? Who do I feel really good about? Who do I not feel so good about? And let's go ahead and jump into this. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind here is there's a whole lot of teams. There's a whole lot of teams that I'm buying very aggressively. There's a whole lot of teams that I'm selling. So this is not by any stretch of the imagination. This is not an exhaustive list, but there are a couple of teams that stand out. We're going to start with buy. We're going to start on the high side of things, and then we'll get a little bit more critical towards the end, but we'll start with the buy, and maybe the number one team on this list for me is the Utah Utes. Devin Dampier and Jason Beck coming over from New Mexico is massive. Everyone's talking about what's happening over there at Oklahoma with Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer coming in from Washington State. Massive. There's no two ways about that. But Utah got their own pair of a quarterback and OC. It's a really good group. Jason Beck is one of those guys that will be a Power 5 head coach here pretty soon. New Mexico had a really explosive offense. The difference between this offense and that offense is he's got some high-caliber offensive linemen in front of him. Spencer Fano's incredible on one side of the offensive line, probably the best offensive tackle in the entire country. Caleb Lumo on the other side is incredible, absolutely a guy that will be an NFL player. And then you add guys like Wayshawn Parker at running back from Washington State. You had Tobias Merriweather from Cal. Ryan Davis comes over from New Mexico, was Devin Dampier's favorite target over there at New Mexico last year. This is a very talented group. This is a more talented group from what they had last year. And the quarterback position, hopefully at the very least, will be a lot more competent this year. Because I think everyone was watching Utah last year thinking if they had Cam Rising on the field, this might be an 8 or 9 win team. They might be right in the mix for the Big 12. They ended up missing a bowl game because they just didn't have a quarterback to turn to. I think Isaac Wilson will be a much better backup option this upcoming year, but you don't necessarily need to want to break that glass at the very end of the day. You want Devin Dampier out there, and I think he is a special quarterback for them. I think a lot of people are going to get to know that name very quickly this upcoming year. Then on defense, you got Teo Johnson, Smith Snowden, Lander Barton. You got Logan Fano, an incredible linebacker, one of the better in the country. All of those guys have played a ton of football, along with just about every other starter on this defense has played a ton of football, ton of Utah football. And when you got Morgan Scalley, when you got Kyle Whittingham, which I think this might be the last year for Kyle Whittingham in college football, I think they're going to leave it all out there. And I do think this is a team that could very well win the Big 12. We'll get into predictions probably in a week or so here, but at the end of the day, this is a special team. I think there's a lot of really, really good things happening for this squad. I think the wide receiver group is very, very fun, and I think that quarterback, Devin Dampier, is going to change the dynamic around Utah and bring them right back where they belong, which is towards the top of that conference. There's no doubt about that. Another former Pac-12 team, just in a different conference, is the Washington Huskies. Another quarterback I just love another team that I just love the quarterback of. DeMond Williams is special in every sense of the word. He is a guy that during the bowl game last year caught a lot of eyes, and a lot of people had some Johnny Manziel comparisons. I don't know if he's going to be that good, frankly, but he does have a lot of that ad-lib ability. There's so much stuff that he can do where it feels like he has no answers. He finds his way out of the pocket and makes a big-time play. He is that level of player. You add Jonah Coleman right next to him coming over from Arizona to reunite with Jed Fish. It's a special group in that backfield, no doubt about it. And then on the outside, Denzel Boston, one of the most under-talked about wide receivers in the entire country. Omari Evans, a guy that never quite made his stride over there at Penn State, but is an explosive player downfield, absolutely can add a dynamic to that offense. And Jed Fish, he's going to be calling plays. He's a very good play caller, especially when he has the quarterback that he feels confident in. He feels confident in this kid. I can promise you that. And then on defense, you have Ryan Walters coming over from Purdue, got fired as the head coach there. He's taking over for Steve Belichick as the defensive coordinator. They got a fun group. It's a very new group with a lot of new transfers coming in, but Ephesians Presock and Takario Davis, about as good of a cornerback duo as you're going to find in the entire country. A very, very good duo, and I think will allow some of those younger or transfer players up front to do their work. And I think it's going to be maybe not a top 10 defense in the country, maybe even not top 20. I think they're going to be plenty good. And then you look at the schedule, they can get to 10 wins. There's a lot of things that set up very nicely for this team. They get Oregon at the very end of the year. There's a moment there where they could be a, say, 9-2 team. Oregon could be a 9-2 team walking in, and they could be playing for a CFP spot. Obviously, a lot of stuff would have to happen before that, but at the end of the day, that'll be a really interesting team to watch, and I think Damon Williams is going to be a household name very quickly this year. I'll be the guy that jumps on this bandwagon along with everyone else. It seems like everyone is picking Georgia Tech out of the ACC to be the team to watch, and I'll do it as well. I think this team is really, really fun. Cannot love what Brent Key is building about 10 minutes up the road from me any more than I do right now. Haynes King, Jamal Haynes in the backfield, as good as you're going to find in the country. Malik Rutherford, you bring in Eric Rivers, who is a very good player. Obviously, losing Eric Singleton is a massive loss. I think Eric Rivers can very much fill that void. Very talented kid, 1,000-yard receiver from FIU last year. And then one of the most experienced and best offensive lines you'll find in the entire country. Some really, really talented kids, some guys that absolutely will make All-American teams, and I think this is a group that will be really talented, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Then you go over to defense, and it's being taken over by Blake Gideon, the former Texas safeties coach and former Texas safety, is taking over there. Kyle Efford, Clayton Powell-Lee, Amari Harvey, and a number of other guys are coming over in the portal. It should be an improved group. Now, a lot of that is still up in the air about how they go about business, but I do like the talent. I do like the guys that are coming back, especially Kyle Efford. I think he's one of the best linebackers in the country, and I think this is a group that can do enough to give this offense enough reps, to give this offense enough opening, and frankly, if you watch this offense, they will grind clock. They will give their defense plenty of time to rest in between their different possessions, and I think it's going to bode really well for the Yellow Jackets. They obviously get Clemson, they get Georgia. Everything else is teams that they should be favored against. Now, will they win all those games is still up in the air, but I think this could very well be a 9-win team, maybe even a 10-win team, and knocking on the door of the playoff. And then finally, let's do this one. I'll be this guy. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with the Aggies this year. It does not feel right. I'll be totally honest with you. There are a number of things about the last, 5-10 years about Texas A&M football that make me very nervous. But I keep looking at this team, and I keep looking at the talent level. I cannot deny it. This is a team that has just about everything in place. Now, Marcel Reed is a question mark in a lot of different people's eyes. I think he's ready to make a huge jump. The elite athleticism is obvious. There's no two questions about that. I think the question is, can he make the elite level throws that he's going to need to make? He's going to have the guys around him to make it a little bit easier at the very least. You have Le'Veon Moss at running back, one of the best running backs in the country, maybe the best running back in the country, behind Jeremiah Love at the very least. And then you did lose some wide receivers in the portal, but Casey Concepcion, one of the best wide receivers in the country. Everyone needs to be talking about this guy because he was at NC State, did not get the love or the attention that he deserved. He is absolutely going to be a big part of this offense and maybe one of the best wide receivers in the entire SEC. You also add Mario Craver from Mississippi State, another very speedy guy that can make something out of nothing. I think it's going to really benefit Marcel Reed. And then you got the quarterback run game. And you have an offensive line that's probably the best in the entire country. Alabama and them are right around the same for me, but elite group up front. Everything is going the right direction for A&M going into this year offensively. I think the big thing here is Marcel Reed is your starter. There's no, do we call an offense for Connor Wegman? Do we call an offense for Marcel Reed? Do we call something in between? You know what this guy can do. You know he has elite athleticism. You know he can do a lot of the things that Colin Klein did when he was in college. So a lot of those things, it's going to be a real comfort level for him, Marcel Reed in this offense, and Colin Klein calling plays for a specific player rather than two totally different players. Then on defense, you got Cassius Howell. I think he's an absolute beast that's just waiting to break out. Torian York is one of the best linebackers, maybe a top 3 linebacker in the entire country. Will Lee on the back end is as good as it gets in coverage corner. These guys are set up to make a CFP run, and I know that's said just about every year around this time. I will be the guy that makes the mistake on the Texas A&M Aggies this year. I just think it's a really good team. I think they have everything in place. I think the schedule is plenty tough, but I think they have the ability to make it work. And I think at the very least, they will be in the mix going into that Texas game, just like they were this past year. Then I got to get to the sell, and this one makes me a little bit sad. I am going to sell the BYU Cougars. I just don't see it. I like Chase Roberts. I like JoJo Phillips. I like LJ Martin. I think they have different talent around that field. I love Kalani Sitake. I think he does an incredible job with that program, has been one of the more consistent names in college football over the last decade, even a little bit longer. He's done an incredible job there. I just don't buy it. I think you're losing a couple of O-line starters that I think were huge. Jake Retzlaff obviously moving on does affect this. And the other part of this is when you watch BYU last year, it wasn't that they were a fraudulent team. It wasn't that they didn't deserve to win these games. It's just to say a lot of things went their way. Whether it was a bounce of ball or something being tipped up in the air and picked off by them, just little things that felt like they kept going the Cougars' direction, it usually finds its way back to the middle. Now, I don't think it's going to be a bottoming out. I think Kalani Sitake's too good of a coach to have them go from the season they had last year at 10-2 to 7-5 or 6-6. I just don't think it's going to be quite as pretty. I think the quarterback play is going to take a drop off, and I think they're going to be a team that just finds itself in kind of the hodgepodge in the middle of the Big 12, which is a tough place to be, especially after the year that they just had. But I do think this is a very good program. I still think they are very much trending up, especially with a lot of the NIL stuff that they have coming down the pipe with Ryder Lyons coming in a couple of years. But I just don't buy it in 2025 for the BYU Cougars. This next one's going to get me in a little bit of trouble, but I need some time to explain. I am not buying the Oregon Ducks, and I want this to be very, very clear. This is in a context of what the Oregon Ducks could be, because the reality is, for this football team, they want to win a national title. That is the ultimate goal for this team. There's no two questions about that. No player on that team, no coach on that team, no fan of this team would tell you any differently. They want a national title. They want it this year. That's the reality. Now, when I look at this team, the talent level is elite. There's no two ways about that. But the wide receiver group is not nearly as good as it has been the last couple of years. They had dudes all over the field the last couple of years, especially with Evan Stewart going down with an injury that will keep him out the entirety of the year. You have DeCorian Moore, one of the most talented freshman wide receivers in the country, but is still a freshman, is still a guy that needs to step up and maybe be the number one guy in this team. You have Gary Bryant Jr., who is going to be a factor, but is he going to be a game changer the way that he might have to be? Jerion Dickey is another name that has to step up big in this offense if they're going to be effective. And you're breaking in 3 new offensive line starters from the transfer portal, 2 guys coming up from the G5 level to start offensive tackle in the Big Ten. There are a lot of worries there. It's not to say that they can't be successful. Frankly, they will be successful. This will be a good football team. I can almost promise you that this will be a team that will be tough to beat every single week, will absolutely play good football. I just think there's enough margin for error here where they could lose some of these games that people might be circling right now as a W without question. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the entire back end is essentially new bodies. And they did this last year with Jabbar Muhammad and Kobe Savage and all those guys coming in. This year, I think they have a lot of really good guys. Dylan Tiananmen is one of those guys that can really make some plays, but I don't know. It's one of those things where as many times as you go into the portal, there's got to be one time where it just doesn't quite fit perfectly and it doesn't quite go your way. I think last year they had a couple of those moments early. I think it might just be a little bit more aggressive this year. This is going to be a good team. This is going to be a team that I think will be in the CFP conversation. I just think it's going to be a little bit more of a rocky road than people are thinking right now for the Oregon Ducks. I could very well see this being a 10-2, maybe even 9-3 team by the end of the year, and you're looking at the CFP just hoping that you get in on Selection Sunday rather than being very firmly in after maybe playing in a Big Ten championship the way that they very well expect over there in Eugene. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. Definitely a lot of things that are very good about this team. I just think when you're talking about a top 10 team in college football, there are a couple more questions here than I would like. Over to the ACC, and I'm going to North Carolina. I am not buying what Bill Belichick is selling this upcoming year. It would be really cool. I'm not going to lie to you about that. Watching Bill Belichick come onto the scene, win 9 games or 10 games, and and be in the conversation for the CFP is something that would be awesome to watch. There's no doubt about that. They bring in Gio Lopez as the starting quarterback. They return some guys on the O-line. They have tons of transfers on their two deep. There's no doubt about that. The defense is entirely new, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It wasn't a great defense for UNC last year, and you bring in one of the best defensive, maybe the best defensive mind in all of football history. I like Thaddeus Dixon coming on in, DeAndre Robinson coming in from Florida, very talented defensive tackle. I just don't think overall it's a great group. I think they have a couple of guys that will make some big time plays. I think there will be moments where it looks like a really good defense, especially later in the season. Just don't think they'll get off to the start that they need to really make this season worth it. I also think when you're talking about Gio Lopez, very good quarterback, absolutely a guy that can play some good football for them. They got a kid in Bryce Baker sitting right behind him that I know Bill Belichick wants to hold on to, especially if he's planning on being there multiple years. This is a kid you want in a Tar Heel uniform for as long as you possibly can. If things go awry, if they lose that TCU game to start the year, maybe lose one or two in the early parts of the ACC schedule, you could very well see that kid for the rest of the year, and then maybe they're sitting at a 6-6 record or a 7-5 record at the end of the year. I don't think that would be the worst thing in the world. I don't think that would be a disaster for North Carolina, but I think everyone's expecting just a little bit more. Whether that's fair or not is up for debate, but at the end of the day, there's just not a team that I see doing much of anything in the ACC, especially with how many teams are right in that kind of second tier. I think it's going to be really hard for North Carolina to break into that group. And then I'm selling the Tennessee Volunteers. And this is one that kind of hurts, I'll be totally honest with you, because I really love what Josh Heupel did this offseason in the Nico Iamaleava situation. I think he handled it perfectly. I think there was no other way to handle it. I think you had to put your foot down, had to let that guy walk out the door. I don't think that makes you a better team. That's the reality of that situation. Now, I think Joey Aguilar can execute this offense. He's still got to learn the offense. There's still a lot of things that he does not know about this offense that he's going to need to know in a hurry as they get closer to week one against a Syracuse team that very badly wants to win that game. If Syracuse can win that game, they could be off to the races on another incredible season under Fran Brown. But at the end of the day, when I look at this team, there are so many things to like. There's so much good talent on this team. There's so many great things happening on both lines of scrimmage, but a lot of changes on both lines of scrimmage, particularly the offensive line, but the defensive line, you're losing tons of guys as well. I think they have a little bit more talent on the defensive line to replace those guys, but the big thing here is you don't have a Dylan Sampson on this team. You just don't. You have two running backs that are going to be really good running backs and are going to be guys that are very productive throughout the year for this team. They're not going to be Dylan Sampson. And the amount of things that Dylan Sampson covered up for this football team was astronomical last year. They have dudes on defense, but Jermod McCoy has been injured for most of the offseason, is still injured going into fall camp. Is he going to be fully ready to go? The Boo Carter situation adds some questions. Mike Matthews is someone that just has to step up big, and you haven't heard his name quite as much as you would like to. They're going to be a solid team. They're going to be able to play defense. They're going to be able to run the ball at the very least effectively. I think Joey Aguilar can execute this offense. I just think when we look at the teams in the SEC and look at the teams right around them that they're going to have to play, I think it's going to be really tough to overcome some of those things that they were able to overcome because of Dylan Sampson, because of James Pierce Jr., because of some of the freaks they had on that team. They just don't have them this year. I like this Tennessee team. I think they could very well be a good 8-4, probably 9-3 team. But at the end of the day, I just don't fully buy into Tennessee following up that CFP appearance last year with another one this year. I think it's going to be a solid step back for Josh Heupel's group over there in Knoxville in 2025. But there's a lot of other teams that I could buy, that I could sell. I just don't want to put my stamp on anything than what I just put my stamp on. You know, there are a couple of teams out there. The Oregon one is aggressive. Let's just be totally honest. I am selling Oregon in relation to what they did or what they want to do this upcoming year is the best way to put it. It's not saying Oregon's going to go 6-5 or 5-7 and Dan Lanning's going to get fired and everything's going to burn to the ground. It's just saying that this team wants to win a national title. I think they're missing a lot of the pieces to really get over that hump. But they could very well prove me wrong. Dan Lanning could make me look like an idiot, and then I would come on here and be more than happy to apologize. But at the end of the day, those are the teams I'm buying, those are the teams I'm selling. Let's take our last break here. When we come back, let's just talk about my top 10 quarterbacks. As we head into this year, just about everyone has gotten their top 10 out, and I had a couple of tweaks to my post-spring top 10 quarterbacks, so wanted to break that down right after this, so stick with us.